Good morning. Join. We are going to give some more minutes. That council members are finalizing another executive session. They should be able to join shortly, and then we will start. Thank you. Good morning. I will just inform that the session has concluded, so let's just give a couple more minutes so council members and alternates can all join into this meeting, and we should be able to start very shortly. Thank you for your patience. Good morning. I have just been informed that our coacher might need a couple more minutes before he joins. So I would suggest that we will start at 7:20, so in 10 minutes from now. So if anyone needs some time to grab a cup of coffee, do any pause, now is the time. So thank you all. I will also put it in the chat. We will start 7:20. Thank you.
Going to ascend. Like,
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I see that our dear co-chair has now joined. Thank you very much, Richard, for all your hard work these days. Thanks for joining. Council was advised that we will start around 7:20, so you came in just in time. With that said, Richard, I think that I will hand it straight to you. We have quorum, so we are good to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naomi, and apologies everyone for the slight delay in commencing today. So where we left off yesterday was the agenda item 4, and there was the text for the document was going to be updated and circulated. That did take place. So on the basis of that document being transmitted. I wanted to open the floor up for any remaining questions before we put the updated text for approval. Naomi, do you want to open the floor up for any remaining questions or comments?
Of course, Mr. Co-Chair. Floor is now open for any comments on this agenda item. I believe, Mr. Co-Chair, that there is no one requesting the floor. So back to you.
Thank you very much, Naomi. On that basis, I would propose that Council, having considered the document GEF/GBFF.0504 towards a resource mobilisation strategy for the global biodiversity framework, approves that decision text as circulated yesterday. I don't see any calls from the floor. The decision is so approved. Thank you, everyone. And we'll now move back onto, or should I say back to, agenda item 3, which is the progress report on the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. I'd like to now invite Yurgis and Razan from the GEF Secretariat to introduce document GEF/GBFF.05/03, which is the progress report on the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. Over to you, Yurgis and Razan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. Good time of the day to all. It's my pleasure to introduce the progress report on the GBFF. This edition covers progress in programming and progress with the GBFF's governance arrangement. We'll first turn to programming. Programming, as you know, under the GBFF is carried out through selection rounds that are driven by selection criteria and by 3 portfolio level targets that were set by the Council. At the previous Council meeting in June, we reported on the first programming tranche, which was completed in December 2024. At that time, a total of about 200 million had been programmed in 41 countries. 1 portfolio level target had been met with 32% of GBFF financing to support actions by IPLCs for biodiversity. But 2 portfolio level targets were lagging, with 36% of GBFF funding allocated to SIDS and LDCs at that time versus a 36 plus 3% target. And we had at that time 20% programmed through international financial institutions, IFIs, versus a 25% target. Since the previous Council, the second tranche of programming opened on August 11, making close to $162 million available for additional programming. On July 7, the CEO announced 2 selection rounds, the 4th and the 5th. In light of progress on the portfolio level targets that we've just seen, the CEO decided that the 4th selection round would be restricted to submissions from SID and LDCs through any agency, and to submissions through international financial institutions for countries that are neither SIDS nor LDCs. The 4th round has now been completed, and we'll go through the results in a minute. The 5th selection round is currently in progress. It was open to all countries and all agencies without restriction. I will provide an overview of the submissions we received by the deadline of December 17th, 2 days ago in this presentation. But let's first look at the results of the 4th selection round. We have submissions shown on the left and approvals on the right. The Secretariat received a total of 43 submissions from 57 countries, for a total funding request of $179 million. Out of these, the CEO selected 22 submissions for a total funding of $87.1 million. These new projects are to benefit 34 countries, including 30 countries that are accessing the GBFF for the first time. Regional distribution of these approvals largely reflects that of submissions, with most approvals benefiting Africa, followed by Latin America and the Caribbean. The fourth round enabled good progress on all portfolio level targets, which were all exceeded in this round. Most notably, 56% of the resources programmed in the fourth round is allocated to SIDS and LDCs, and 47% is programmed through international financial institutions. We really thank countries and IFIs for the engagement in this round. Now let's look at the entire GBFF portfolio to date. Out of the 170 submissions we received over the 4 completed selection rounds, 62 submissions were selected. They will benefit 71 countries for a total of close to 290 million. As shown at the bottom of the slide, and as already discussed by Council yesterday, the GBFF is now meeting all of its portfolio level targets, with close to 29% to support actions by IPLCs for biodiversity, 43% allocated to SIDS and LDCs, and more than 28% programmed through IFIs. I want to emphasize that at 28%, through IFIs represent a significant engagement for a country-driven biodiversity portfolio. It is more than double the share we observe on Biodiversity Star. In the GEF Trust Fund at the moment, IFIs manage a little under 14% of the Biodiversity Star program to date in GEF 8. On this slide, the map shows the geographical extent of the portfolio to date. Dots on the map and in the progress bar at the top are color-coded to show progress along the project cycle. Projects in green have already received the green light for implementation start from the GEF. Projects in blue and yellow are in the final stages before endorsement. They will soon turn green. Overall, we see good progress toward implementation start. Looking at regional distribution, 40% of the GBFF funding program to date has been allocated to Latin America and the Caribbean, 33% to Africa, 22% to Asia, and 5% to Europe, Central Asia, and the Middle East. The regional distribution reflects the imbalance in the number of submissions we received. It also reflects the trade-off between regional balance and 2 of the portfolio level targets, the ones related to IFIs and IPLCs. Latin America indeed continues to dominate submissions through IFIs and submissions that contribute to the IPLC target. The share of Latin America and the Caribbean, which previously stood at 43% in a previous report, has nonetheless decreased in line with the application of the selection criterion regional balance in the 4th selection round. Looking at agencies, we have now 13 of the 18 GEF agencies that are involved in GBFF programming. Collectively, UN agencies represent just above 1/3 of the portfolio, NGOs about another third, and IFIs over 28%. No agency concentrates more than 19% of GBFF resources at this point in time. Now looking at the 5th selection round, which was concluded its submission window 2 days ago. Please note that the figures presented on this slide are before the GEF Secretariat carried out the eligibility check, most importantly, confirmation of the country endorsement. So the figures may evolve slightly. It was important to show what was the extent of the funding request at this stage. We received a total of 84 submissions from 78 countries for a total funding request of $325 million, which demonstrates an increasing demand for support from the GBFF. We thank all countries and agencies who submitted proposals. But as you have seen in the previous slide, in the progress bar, we have about $75 million left for programming. So round 5 will be particularly competitive. I apologize in advance, as we'll have to disappoint many countries and agencies this time around. In this round, where there was no restriction on country groups or agencies that could submit, 24% of the funding request comes from SIDS and LDCs, 30% is to support actions by IPLCs, and 22% has been submitted through IFIs. Last point related to programming. The GBFF Council requested in June the Secretariat to develop guidelines for the tracking and reporting of GBFF resources to support actions by IPLCs. I'm happy to report that the requested guidelines have been developed through a thorough consultative process, which notably included an open consultation during the first meeting of the subsidiary body on Article 8J of the Convention on Biological Diversity in October in Panama. The guidelines have been published as an information document to this council meeting. They provide project proponents with a step-by-step guide on what can and what should be reported and counted as contributing to the portfolio level target related to support to IPLCs. The Secretariat thanks all partners and stakeholders who contributed to the development of these guidelines. And with that, we'll turn to governance arrangements, and I will pass the floor to my colleague, Rezan Nimir. Please, Rezan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Yorgos. Hello, everyone. And I'm pleased to present key developments related to GBFF governance since the last council meeting. Let me begin with the auxiliary body. And as a reminder, this body is mandated to provide advice and recommendations to the council concerning the implementation of the GBFF programming direction. As of today, the auxiliary body is composed of 18 members representing 12 constituencies for the first term, which runs until June 30, 2026. So the progress report provides some updates on the steps taken in responding to the council request that was made at the last meeting, which asked the auxiliary body to explore options for achieving the target of programming 25% of GBFF resources through IFIs or international financial institutions, and to present advice on this matter to the council at its 6th meeting. To support with this request, the Secretariat met with the co-chairs of the auxiliary body to discuss how best to facilitate its work. And at their request, the Secretariat prepared a background note summarizing the current progress and outlining some preliminary measures for consideration. In addition to drafting a draft survey, requested also by the co-chairs to help gather perspectives from the GEF operational focal points on working with IFI. So this is in short the progress made to date, and the Secretariat will continue to support the co-chairs and the auxiliary body as needed. Now turning to the advisory group, next slide, please. So now turning to the advisory group of non-sovereign participants, and let me begin by recalling its mandate to provide advice and recommendations to the Council, particularly on engaging non-sovereign contributors. So as previously reported and following the Council decision to expand the composition of the advisory group to include 2 categories of non-contributing members, the Secretariat earlier in this year invited Council members to submit nominations. By the end of the nomination period, which ran from March 26 to July 31st, we had received 1 nomination for the first category of subnational and regional public institutions, and 6 nominations from 4 constituencies for the second category of experts in resource mobilization. Next slide. So we would like first to take this opportunity to thank all Council members who submitted nominations. The Secretariat reviewed all submissions received, conducted due diligence, and assessed eligibility and expertise. And further details on the type of information submitted and assessed can be found in the progress report. While most nominees had strong qualifications, the Secretariat followed a Council decision to limit each category to a maximum of 2 individuals and ensured regional balance among those selected. Based on that, on November 5th, the Secretariat submitted the recommended members to the Council for approval through a decision by mail. As no objections were received by the deadline, the decision was confirmed in accordance with the Council procedures. So I'm pleased to report that the following non-contributing members have been selected to join the advisory group. For the subnational category, the Senate Department for Mobility, Transport, Climate Action, and the Environment of the Federal State of Berlin has been selected, which nominated by the constituency of Germany. And 2 members were selected for the experts in resource mobilization, Ms. Simone Carolina Pauch, nominated by the constituency of Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Mrs. Stéphanie Flora-Capdevel, nominated by the constituency of France. So last slide, and just to say finally, a recommended decision included in the progress report is to consider extending the first term of non-contributing members to December 31st, 2026, basically to allow more time for meaningful engagement and for their contributions to effectively inform the work of the advisory group. Thank you very much. I will now hand it back to the co-chair.
Thank you very much for those presentations, Jurgis and Razan. I'd now like to open the floor for any questions and comments in relation to the presentations. Over to you, Naomi, to manage questions from the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. So the floor is now open. Again, anyone interested to request the floor, you can simply, yes. I'm just being informed by the secretariat that we need to bring in Andrea from the auxiliary body.
Oh, my apologies. So yes, before we open the floor, maybe can we now request that Andrea from the GBFF auxiliary body please take the floor to make some comments. Thank you. Over to you, Andrea.
Andrea, we see you, but if you can unmute yourself, so we can hear you.
Sorry, I wasn't able to hear.
We hear you now, Andrea.
Something
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Andrea, we hear you well and we see you well. Floor is yours.
Oh, hold on. Oh, I can't hear you. Hello?
Yes, Andrea, we hear you and we see you. So feel free to address the floor.
Thank you. Distinguished council members, advisors, colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is a great pleasure to join to all for the fifth GBFF Council meeting. On behalf of my colleague and co-chair Sino Tohir Soda from Tajikistan and me, it is an honor for me to report on the activities carried out by the group since May 2025. As you may recall, and as Razan just reported, at its fourth meeting in June 2025, the GBFF Council requested the auxiliary body to explore options to support the achievement of the portfolio level target of allocating 25% of the GBFF resources through international financial institutions, IFIs, to serve as GEF agencies. The Council also asked the body to provide technical advice and recommendations at its sixth meeting. In response to this mandate, Mr. Tohir Soda and I requested the GBFF Secretariat to assist us by preparing a background note to outline the current level of IFI engagement, to identify potential obstacles, such as the misalignment between finance and environmental ministries, and proposes initial steps to inform future recommendations by the auxiliary body. We also asked the Secretariat to support us with the development of a draft questionnaire for our constituencies. This survey aims to gather feedback from the GEF operational focal points regarding their perception of the advantages and disadvantages of working with IFIs. Topics include co-financing potential, procedural complexity, in-country presence, and comparative benefits of known IFI agencies. Both documents, the background notes and the draft survey has been shared with the auxiliary body members for review and discussions, and we hope this will enable a collective response and definition of next steps in early 2026. This would conclude our activity report, and before closing, I would like to share that as of January, I will be leading CONAVIO, my institution, for 20 years, to take up the position of National Facilitator for Mexico under the MBSAP Accelerator Partnership. And this means I will no longer be able to continue my collaboration with the auxiliary body, either as co-chair or in any other capacity. So it has been a great honor to serve in this role, and I'm deeply grateful to the GBFF Secretariat for their steadfast support, and to my co-chair, Sino, for his professionalism and excellent coordination throughout our time working together. I trust that Mexico or any other country within my constituency will soon nominate a representative to continue contributing to this important work. Thank you very much, and I wish you a productive session and continued success.
Thank you very much for those remarks, and I also appreciate your contributions to the auxiliary group, Andrea. Very much appreciated. I'd now like to move back to the opening up the floor to any questions. And Naomi, if you could manage the order of interventions, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair, and indeed this time incentivized council to raise the hand, so thank you for that. We have Nicholas, Andrea, Joko, Faisal, Laura, Victoria, and Garth in that order. Nicholas from Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Noemi, and thank you to the Secretariat for the progress reports, and also to the auxiliary body for their good work so far, which we asked them to keep up. We're especially happy to see that the GBFF is fulfilling all of its portfolio targets now, which I think just shows that the portfolio targets are a good way to steer our portfolio. And we also commend the Secretariat for actively taking a role in this by opening up the last selection round only for LDCs, SIDS, and IFIs. And we're also happy with the good co-finance ratio of 1 to 7.2. So I already said we're glad that the auxiliary body is doing its work, and positively so, and is now working on proposals to maintain and improve IFI involvement. And we encourage them to continue to do this. We're looking forward to their suggestions, and we also encourage them to consult very closely with the IFIs themselves. It's also good news that we now have additional members to the advisory group, and we're particularly happy to see that the German federal state of Berlin has been included in this. Berlin has been a very active champion of biodiversity, for example, with the Berlin Urban Nature Pact, which is an initiative for cities, local and regional authorities around the world to take the lead on implementing bold biodiversity action. At the same time, we feel it was not communicated very clearly why some nominees for the resource mobilization category were recommended over others, and we would appreciate a more transparent process in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Andrea, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. We welcome this progress report, and we thank the Secretariat for its work. And we wish you well, Andrea, and thank you for your help. We support extending the term of the non-contributing members of the advisory group to the end of 2026. On the draft guidelines, we welcome the draft guidelines on tracking support for IPLCs. We're keen to better understand the process for identifying IPLC organisations and note the responsibility sits with GEF agencies. We also suggest the guidelines specify that representation be confirmed by the IPLCs themselves through their recognised decision-making structures. Finally, we're pleased that resources have been programmed through 13 of the 18 GEF agencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Yoko-san, floor is yours, followed by Faisal.
Thank you, Noemi. Japan welcomes the progress of the GBFF as 2 rounds of selection for the second tranche have been conducted and the process is going smoothly. However, we would like to note that the remaining balance of the fund is limited and resource mobilization from non-sovereign donors, including the private sector, is a pressing issue. We would be grateful to know the status of such resource mobilization efforts by the Secretariat. Regarding the portfolio level targets, as mentioned by previous speakers, we welcome the report that all 3 targets have been steadily progressed and exceeded the original targets at this point. Especially, we appreciate that the target for programming by IFIs was achieved for the first time, and that programming by SIDS and LDCs, which we place as significance, have also exceeded 39%. We encourage the Secretariat to continue this way of pursuing the portfolio level targets while selecting the projects in the future. We also place a great importance on balancing among regions, which is one of the criteria for the selection. We recognize that currently Latin American and Caribbean region accounts for 40%, while Asia is 20% as presented. We hope this significant difference to be addressed by the next round of programming cycle and the regional balance is taken into account. Thank you.
Arigato, Yoko-san. I'll now give the floor to Faisal Lauren, and then we will pause to hear from Jorges and Rosanna before we go back to the list of speakers. So with that said, Faisal from the CSO Network, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Naomi. The GEF CSO Network welcomes the progress report of the GBFF and appreciates the rapid action to operationalize the fund, launch early calls, and begin programming of resources. The pace of initial action is encouraged and helps sustain momentum. We also welcome that the GBFF is already exceeding its aspirational share for Indigenous peoples and local community-related actions, and stress the importance of protecting this focus as the portfolio grows. We note positively the new guidelines on action by IPLCs, and we propose that such guidelines also considered to be adapted for use by the GEF Trust Fund and LDCF SCCF. We support the proposal just now by Andrea from New Zealand, that in terms of identification of IPLCs, that the civil society and other networks play some role to support this process. At the same time, we see a few areas where GBFF could go further. First, representation and governance. We are concerned that several constituencies remain unrepresented in the auxiliary body, with 8 out of 20 constituencies yet to nominate representatives. This leaves regions like East Africa or Southeast Asia without representation at a critical early stage. We would welcome renewed efforts to ensure full regional representation, so technical advice reflects diverse contexts and realities. Second, scale and predictability of resources. While early programming is welcome, we are rather concerned about the pace of contribution of funds to GBFF, which are available for projects of only 370 million over a period of about 3 years. This is significantly less than the needs of recipient countries and not in line with the agreed target of 20 billion by 2025 of annual financing flows from developed nations for biodiversity as agreed at the CBD process. As implementation begins, we would also welcome clearer reporting on how IPLC engagement and decision-making are taking place in practice. Looking ahead, we also encourage stronger support for engagement and capacity building of civil society, Indigenous people and local communities, women and youth including support for community-led action at the local level, where biodiversity protection and stewardship ultimately take place. The CSO network looks forward to continued engagement in consultations, sensitization, planning, mobilization, capacity building, and participatory monitoring as the GBFF moves into implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Faisal. Lauren, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Noemi. So we welcome the progress report on the GBFF, and we can approve the extension of the first term for non-contributing members of the advisory group. We're also pleased to note that 43% of the funds so far have been programmed to LDCs and SIDS, and we hope that this trend will continue in the future. We also note that UNDP has programmed the largest share of resources, 19%. We strongly encourage countries to diversify their use of agencies and especially program projects with agencies with more specific experience and knowledge of GBFF-related themes. And then finally, we have a question. When will the GBFF Council receive a report on the distribution of GBFF resources by agencies? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Now let's give some minutes to Georges and Razan to address these comments and questions, and then we will go back to the list of speakers. And so I want to hand it over to Georges.
Thank you very much, Noemi, and thank you very much for council members for all the support expressed. I'll maybe first respond to Niklas from Germany. Points well taken on transparency in the process for nomination. We already had an exchange, but we'll pay attention in the future to be clear in any additional process we have for such nominations. Point well taken. Andrea, thank you for the support and the comments supported by our CSO network representative on the IPLC's guideline. We're very pleased by the engagement by many stakeholders, well beyond just the GEF partnership participants on those guidelines. Now we know that the proof will be in the pudding and in the implementation, and this is what we'll do with agencies and country proponents and our partners from civil society to really make those guidelines applicable and implemented in practice. But points well taken. Yoko, on resource mobilization, well, as you have seen, we have recruited one staff dedicated to that, and we have worked to provide council with a document towards our resource mobilization strategy, which involve a lot of consultation and discussions on resource mobilization with non-sovereign actors that potentially can be contributors, and which highlighted the need for specific tools and evolution that we had put as ingredient in this document. And we're looking forward to the working group that has been established this morning through the decision to help us and guide us to have a more efficient resource mobilization efforts from non-sovereign partners and make sure we have the tools and the GBFF can respond to their needs so that they can really envisage to make a contribution. On the balance among regions, it's a point well taken. As I've tried to show in the presentation, and it's true across the different selection rounds, the distribution we have currently largely reflects the submissions we have, and we try to balance as much as possible, despite having received fewer submissions from Asia and even fewer from Europe, Central Asia, and the Middle East. As you have seen in the fifth round, in part because of strong engagement from the Secretariat with Asian countries, we have many more submissions from Asia, so we are hopeful that we'll be able to catch up and rebalance distribution. Again, one important point is that we continue to observe, even in the fifth round, a strong trade-off between regional balance and the portfolio level targets. Latin America remains the agency that submits to the bulk of proposal through international financial institutions, and it's also Latin America that presents most of the project that contribute significantly to the target of 20% of funding for IPLC. So there is a trade-off we're trying to manage, but the point well taken on balance amongst region. And we encourage other regions to submit through IFIs. There's a point well taken on the auxiliary body, and we'll redouble efforts to make sure that constituencies that still have an opportunity to nominate experts in the auxiliary body do so, to make sure we have representation, and especially in the discussion on the IFI target, really have the inputs from all recipient regions on their challenges or why, as we see currently, they're not opting as IFIs as the first choice. And I will leave it to that. Maybe no, sorry, for our colleagues from Norway, I do think we do report on the distribution by agency in the progress report. So welcome the clarification on what additional information you would need, and we'll be happy to provide it, of course. But I think in table 3, we do provide report by agencies. It covers only the selection round that were obviously completed by the time of reporting, but I think we do report. But we're in the hands of Council for any additional information we should include in the progress reports. Thank you very much. Back to you, Noémie.
Okay, thank you very much, Jorgis. We will now continue with the list of speakers. We have Victoria, Garth, Stefan, Ramson, and Catalina. So Victoria, floor is yours.
Thank you, Noémie. Our constituency welcomes this progress report, and we would like to join others in congratulating this GEF Secretariat on reaching all 3 portfolio level targets. We are in particular pleased that the IFI share could be reached and exceeded for the first time since the establishment of the fund. And we think that reserving a call just for SIDS, LDCs, and IFI projects really made a difference to advance on these targets. So perhaps we could think of a similar prioritization when we think about GEF 9 and how to reach portfolio level targets there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Garth from Canada, floor is yours.
Thanks, Noémie. I won't repeat the comments just made by Victoria about the portfolio targets and the IFI targets. Germany made similar comments. I would just associate with those. We think that's good news. I should have said from the outset that we welcome the report and we can support both draft council decisions. The only other point we would make, just have a question and 2 related points. So the question is, could you elaborate on how the 28.6% for actions to support Indigenous peoples and local communities was calculated and why the fees are included in this total? And then 2 related points, just to reiterate Canada's position that while we understand the use of term IPLCs in the GEF context, we take the view that conflating Indigenous peoples and local communities into one term fails to recognize the uniqueness of both Indigenous peoples and local communities. And finally, we welcome the interim guidelines set out by the GEF on the actions by Indigenous peoples and local communities to help in the disaggregation of data for the 20% target. And we emphasize that these guidelines are interim and subject to further guidance received by the CBD. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Garth. On va continuer avec Stéphane. Vous avez la parole, Stéphane.
Merci Noémie, bonjour à tous, je vais parler en français. Alors, je ne vais rien dire de très original puisque mon intervention s'inscrit en droite ligne dans ce qu'ont dit Nicolas et Victoria juste avant moi. Néanmoins, c'est suffisamment important pour nous pour prendre la parole, donc je voudrais commencer par remercier le secrétariat pour cette présentation des résultats très encourageante. Je pense que ça démontre à la fois le fort intérêt que génère le GBFF dans les pays partenaires, mais aussi la rapidité et l'efficacité avec laquelle le secrétariat instruit ces propositions, et nous souhaiterions l'en remercier. Comme les collègues, nous nous félicitons de l'atteinte des 3 cibles au niveau du portefeuille. Donc nous reconnaissons que le mode de pilotage innovant que nous avons choisi pour le GBFF, un pilotage au niveau du portefeuille, présente une pression plus forte sur le secrétariat. Ça le conduit aussi à faire des arbitrages parfois difficiles, comme Jurgis vient de l'expliquer, avec les équilibres géographiques. Mais il nous semble maintenant très clair que les résultats sont là. Et je pense qu'avec le temps, la pertinence de ce modèle d'allocation au niveau du portefeuille démontrera ses avantages. Et comme les collègues avant moi, il nous semble utile que ces résultats puissent irriguer nos réflexions dans le cadre de GEF 9 et des modes de décision et d'allocation des ressources pour le Trust Fund principal du FEM. Merci.
Merci beaucoup à toi, Stéphane. I'll now give the floor to Ramson, GBFF observer representing indigenous peoples and local communities, followed by Catalina. Ramson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the floor. The IFB welcomes the progress report on the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund and appreciates their steps so far. IFB acknowledges the collaborative efforts demonstrated throughout the process, particularly acknowledging our request to the expanded engagement during the development of the guidelines to support actions by indigenous peoples and local communities. These consultative dialogues were instrumental to receive recommendations from indigenous peoples and local communities globally, especially to establishing a methodology for separate reporting of funds allocated to indigenous peoples, as well as local communities and other local actors, thereby addressing the concerns raised during the consultative meetings. The IFB recommends that the guidelines be used to provide feedback and updates based on the experiences of implementing partners and reached indigenous peoples and local communities, with aims to establish a precedent for direct funding to indigenous peoples and local communities, thereby fostering an environment conducive to their self-determined endeavors. IFB also, as well as other indigenous peoples and local communities, groups and experts, remain available to provide feedback for the successful Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. Thank you very much for the floor.
Thank you very much to you, Ramson. Now we have 2 more GBFF observers. We will continue with the representative of philanthropy, Catalina, and then with Mega representing the youth. So Catalina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the Nature Positive Initiative, I would like firstly welcome the report of the Secretariat and to celebrate the achievements of the GBFF in this report. I would like to highlight some observation focusing on 3 main ideas. Firstly, I would like to highlight the GBFF significant effort in building a portfolio that not only constitute an achievement in financing biodiversity and managing resources towards the fund's identified priorities, but also serve as a biodiversity laboratory of experience and lesson learned on various issues, emphasizing by the projects, such as the role of indigenous people and local communities in conservation, the synergy between different goals of the Global Biodiversity Framework, and the interaction between the scope of sustainable use and conservation, to name a few examples. Second, I would like to thank and congratulate the GEF Secretariat for the dynamism with which it has guided the operation of the GBFF in a context of a rapid adaptive management. This can only be achieved through dynamism and constant self-reflection on how different roles and spaces in the work program cycle can be made more accessible and adaptable, and by reinventing established processes, as well as the implementation of the GBFF resource mobilization strategy just approved, which entail a constant reflection on the fund governance and function in relation with the resource source and financial flows. Finally, we strongly appreciate the effort to develop the indigenous people and local communities guidelines, especially because we will enable to conduct the GBFF portfolio towards more impact, inclusiveness, equity, and more understanding on the key role of communities on conservation. Thanks a lot, Madam Chair, to give me the floor.
Thank you very much, Catalina, for your intervention. We will now continue with Mega representing the youth.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you, Naomi. I'm speaking on behalf of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network and the Youth Observers. We welcome the progress report and the significant advances in the GBFF implementation. We also emphasize the importance of regional balance in projects as well as balance among implementing agencies. We recommend that the Secretariat further assess the factors behind successes and barriers and provide support to enable other countries and agencies to be equally successful in accessing resources. The progress report notes that observers were consulted on the 3 documents discussed at this meeting. We welcome this development and reiterate that both the consultation process and the incorporation of observer inputs into the documents represent an important step toward meaningful participation. We also expect this to serve as a foundation for a more sustained and structured participatory process, ensuring that observer contributions are consistently heard and reflected over time. Still, about meaningful participation, and specifically in relation to the advisory and auxiliary bodies, we reiterate the importance of engaging observers so they can maintain a comprehensive understanding of GBFF discussions. We respectfully recommend that the co-chairs of these bodies consider inviting or consulting observers as appropriate to broaden the exchange of perspectives and strengthen alignment ahead of council meetings. In addition, we welcome the guidelines on actions by Indigenous peoples and local communities included as an information document. This guidance represents a cornerstone of the GBFF and an important step toward prioritizing and supporting strategies defined by IPRCs themselves. It strengthens respect for their rights to self-determination, self-governance, and free, prior, and informed consent, or FPIC. It may also enable progress toward recognizing IPLC-led organizations as executing agencies. We respectfully recommend that the next progress report include updated figures and progress toward the aspirational 20% allocation for IPLC actions, clearly distinguishing between support actions by IPLCs and actions for IPLCs. Finally, in line with the upcoming results framework agenda, we encourage future progress reports to include data disaggregated by age to track progress related to youth participation in and impacts from funded projects. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to you, Mega, for your voice. Now let's hear from our last 2 speakers, as far as I can see, Mexico and Luciana. So, Regina, floor is yours.
Gracias, Noemi. First, I want to greet and congratulate our colleague Andrea Cruz, who has served as co-chair of the auxiliary body, and wish her success in her new role. Second, our constituency recognizes the operational progress of the GBFF, particularly by meeting the portfolio level targets. Given the current conjuncture, including the GBFF implementation and the upcoming GEF 9 replenishment, and the increasing role of the international financial institutions, our constituency would like to propose that the GEF Secretariat, or maybe the Independent Evaluation Office, to commission an analysis to determine whether projects implemented by IFIs have a differentiated impact compared with those implemented by other agencies. Such analysis would also benefit from incorporating the perspectives of IFIs themselves, including their interests and incentives for engaging with the GBFF, whether such engagement is perceived as beneficial, and how they view their comparative advantages from other GEF agencies. Understanding any such differences would support more informed long-term decision-making and clarify the specific dynamics and value added that IFIs bring to the GEF-funded projects, identify how they can more effectively contribute to biodiversity objectives, and explore how their modalities can be better aligned with national circumstances and policy frameworks. Finally, in future analysis, our constituency requests a dedicated section on the role, needs, and contribution of mega-diverse upper, middle, and high-income countries, including lessons learned from countries such as Costa Rica and Mexico. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Regina. Luciana, floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi. We would like to acknowledge the progress made in operationalizing the fund and welcome the transition of early projects into implementation as the GBFF accelerates. Maintaining predictability, transparency, and alignment with CAP guidance will be essential for delivering the KM GBF targets by 2030. We reiterate the need to preserve equitable and transparent access across all eligible countries. In fact, it was not very useful for us to have this first round of projects compelled to use the MDBs. We missed the opportunity, for example, of accessing our FUNBIO, which is our national agency implementing projects of biodiversity. And we recognize the constructive role of international financial institutions. However, this growing presence must be balanced with the concessional nature of the fund and should not reduce the space for national or regional agencies, which are essential for strengthening country ownership. IPLC's guidelines must remain consistent with national legal frameworks and culturally diverse governance systems. And as the fund expands, IPLC's related financing, it is crucial that engagement modalities remain flexible, non-prescriptive, and fully respectful of territorial rights, customary institutions, and differentiated approaches across the Amazon, Andes, and coastal regions and beyond. We underline the importance of avoiding fragmentation, whether through multiple funding windows, excessive thematic specialization, or parallel advisory structures, as this could dilute the coherence of the fund, compliance, access for developing countries, and create de facto conditionalities. Ensuring a streamlined architecture firmly grounded on COP decisions will be critical for the effective and legitimate implementation of the GBFF. I thank you.
Muito obrigada, Luciana. This concludes the list of speakers. So let's hear some final remarks from Jorgis, Razan, and then I will hand it over to the co-chair. Jorgis, back to you.
Thank you very much, Noemi. First, let me come back to the question from Norway. They clarified in the chat what was the question. And indeed, the program direction of the GBFF planned that at the two-year anniversary date, which was in August, the Secretariat would report on the distribution by agencies so that the target for IFI could be measures to achieve the target by IFI may be discussed by the Council. So the dedicated reporting on agency share at the two-year anniversary date is actually provided as information document 5 for this council. So you have it as a separate document where we provide a detailed description of what was the distribution across agencies after 2 years. So it's GBFF.05/IN5 of this council document. And obviously, since then, we have continued programming, and so the share of the different agencies has changed. But it has been provided in line with what was foreseen in the programming directions. Then to the new questions and the overwhelming support, many thanks for all council members for their comments. Maybe first the question from Canada on how we calculate the share for IPLCs. So we are asking every project to define how much of their project financing budget is dedicated to support actions by IPLCs. They have to explain project by project what this funding is for, and we really cross-reference that to the project activities and justify that it supports for action by IPLCs. And from now on, they will do that with much more details and following the guidelines that we just published. I want to clarify that what counts excludes the agency fees. So what counts as supporting IPLCs, agency fees are excluded from that. But in the denominator, so the amount by which we divide to have a percent, we include the agency fees. So we're actually quite conservative. We're not looking at the share of project financing when we report at the portfolio level, but at the total share of funding we provide, including the agency fees. So in the numerator, it's only really project financing, no fees, but denominator, it includes fees. I hope that was clear on that respect. And Ramson, to our representative from IPLCs and especially IFB, thank you very much for all the engagement throughout and for confirming that you remain available. We really appreciate the collaboration and we'll need it in the future to continue to make sure our projects do support IPLCs in the way they are intended to support them. And likewise, for youth, thank you very much for your engagement. It's actually the case for all our GBFF observers. We really thank them for their time and their collaboration with us. You had a comment on disaggregation by youth. Welcome by age and to have data disaggregated, but to show the involvement of youth. We'll come back to that in the next agenda item, I believe. Point well taken from Regina on the specificity of I5 projects. One clear element in what we have seen in the foreground is that we have received a first wave of really innovative blended finance projects that clearly only I5s can carry out with GBFF money. So we're really excited by those. It's just a few of them for now, but we're really enthusiastic about those submissions, and we hope we'll get more in the future. And we really encourage countries to start using more the GBFF to catalyze more private sector resources with those innovative instruments. And to Brazil, points well taken, all of them. On IPLCs, I want to reiterate that programming in the GBFF is entirely country-driven. So we do not have a specific separate pot of money that goes to IPLCs directly. All the projects that support action by IPLCs, it's because the operational focal point has decided to submit a project that supports action by IPLCs. And obviously, countries do make sure it's in line with their national legislation, including how the percentage is counted as supporting actions by IPLC. So it's really embedded. The GBFF will remain country-driven. That's the main essence. And on the other comment on not multiplying windows and access, point well taken. We had the first discussion on the opportunity for windows on the resource mobilization strategy document that was discussed yesterday. For now, we only have one window with only one project modality. We made it as simple as possible, and we'll strive to maintain simplicity and access to the GBFF. But point well taken and caution well understood on this front. Let me check maybe with Razan if I forgot anything and if she wants to complement. any of those answers. And meanwhile, I just take the opportunity before we close this agenda item to myself also thank Andrea for her help and her service with the auxiliary body. It was a pleasure working with you. I'm sure we'll cross roads again. Razan, anything? Otherwise, back to you, Naomi.
Thank you, Jorgis. I think you covered it all. Just to extend my thanks to all council members for comments provided, and to thank all the GBFF governance bodies, the observers, the auxiliary body, and the advisor groups for their active participation and support to the GBFF. Thank you. Back to you, Naomi.
Thank you, Jorgis and Razan. I see some good interactions in the chat, but no one else requesting the floor. So with that, I'll hand it back to the co-chair.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Thank you, Jorgis and Razan, for your responses, and Andreas for your comments earlier, and also, of course, council members and observers for your interventions. Given there's no other requests for the floor, I would like to now invite council to adopt decision GEF/GBFF 0.05/03 for approval. I don't see any requests for the floor, and the decision is so approved. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 5, which is the results framework of the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. And I'd like to invite Jorgis from the GEF Secretariat to introduce document GEF/GBFF.05/05, the results framework of the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. Over to you, Jorgis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Again, it's my pleasure to present this agenda item, which responds to a council request. The council requested the Secretariat to prepare a proposal for consideration at this 5th meeting to enhance the GBFF results framework. This agenda item also responds to a recommendation of the IEO in its formative evaluation of the GBFF, and it responds to work that was already foreseen in the GBFF programming directions approved by the Council in June 2023. The GBFF currently uses the GEF 8 results framework, that is the core indicators of the GEF Trust Fund, to report at the portfolio level on the main environmental benefits and the socioeconomic co-benefits delivered by the fund. The objective of the revision we'll discuss today is to enable the GBFF to better measure and report on its contribution to the implementation of the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the KMGBF. And we'll do so by better aligning GBFF portfolio level results indicator with the KMGBF monitoring framework that was adopted by the CBD COP in February this year. The council document for this agenda item includes a proposal for the enhanced GBFF results framework, a description of what would be the project level requirements under the new framework, and modalities for rollout. So I'll give a brief overview of each of those 3 elements. First, the enhanced results framework includes 11 GBFF indicators that are all shown in this slide, as well as 26 sub-indicators that I've spared you in this slide. All KMGBF targets that are included for focus support from the GBFF in the programming directions are covered by at least one tailored indicator in this new results framework. About half of the indicators and sub-indicators are new, while the other half is already in use in the GBFF and will continue to be shared with the GEF Trust Fund. Sharing about 17 indicators with the GEF Trust Fund will enable meaningful joint reporting to the CBD across the family of funds. All new indicators that we're proposing to introduce are directly applied or adapted from the KMGBF monitoring framework. Many KMGBF indicators need to be adapted for use at the project level because they were designed for reporting at the country level and for a longer time frame than the typical GBFF projects. I'll just highlight a few novelties. One of them is indicator 8 on finance that is meant to track the fund's contribution to target 19 and 18 of the KMGBF. That will include disaggregation by domestic resource mobilized, private sector resources mobilized, and subsidies or other incentives that are harmful to biodiversity that are identified and for which the elimination, phase out, or reform is initiated, at least initiated, thanks to the GBFF. So it would be more than just GBFF funding and co-finance, which is the only elements we currently are able to report and capture at the portfolio level. Another novelty is indicator 9 that is meant to track policies and processes that are put in place thanks to GBFF projects. This indicator will capture the contribution of GBFF projects to KMGBF targets for which no indicator of direct tangible environmental outcome was applicable. The methodology for this indicator will be fully in line with that of the corresponding binary indicators of the KMGBF monitoring framework to fully help countries in their national reporting to CBD. Finally, I will highlight that we are proposing to significantly enhance our ability to track support to IPLCs with a total of 5 dedicated indicators. There is only 2 that are shown here. It will include tracking the number of beneficiaries that are IPLCs, which currently we do not track. It will include tracking the surface area of indigenous and traditional territories supported by the GBFF, and also tracking the contribution of the fund to security of tenure in lands and territories held or used by indigenous peoples and local communities. In addition to the indicators that are shown here, all relevant GEF 9 indicators that are currently in development to capture socioeconomic co-benefits in the GEF Trust Fund would be applied to the GBFF results framework as well to ensure consistency, and it should also enable us to better cover some of the KMGBF targets related to resilience, climate adaptation, and also to nature contributions to people. So these are the indicators, a glimpse on the indicators we would report on at the portfolio level, but what does it mean at the project level? At the project level, we'll continue to request projects to report only on their direct impact achieved by project completion to make sure there is accountability where there can be accountability. Projects will not be required to report on all the GBFF indicators are presented. As is current practice, they will be required to report on direct beneficiaries with disaggregation by gender, IPLCs, and youth, and also to report on all relevant and at least one of the other GBFF indicators. One novelty we're suggesting to introduce is that we would require projects to provide polygon data of the locations of project interventions, and they would do so at the endorsement request stage, so when they're fully developed, not at the entry stage for the selection rounds. Polygon data will enable efficient portfolio level disaggregation, for example, by ecosystem or to know how many wetlands are covered by GBFF projects. And will also enable more precise portfolio level analysis without unduly increasing the reporting burden at the project level. There are many data will not have to request project to enter. We would be able to do it directly at the portfolio level with the spatial data. All projects will continue to be required to have their own project-specific results framework, their own set of indicators. And within those, we'll request them, whenever feasible and relevant, to include indicators of biodiversity outcomes to complement and underpin the proposed GBFF indicators, which include the best available proxies. Project's result framework will also be encouraged to draw extensively in the indicators of the KMGBF monitoring framework so that all projects better measure their specific contribution to the KMGBF goals and targets. Finally, for next steps and rollout, I want first to thank all partners and stakeholders who contributed to the development of this proposal for a new results framework. We had 2 extensive consultation rounds with very good and valuable inputs. What is proposed is that upon approval by Council, hopefully today, the Secretariat would lead another consultative process to develop guidelines detailing the methodology and requirements for all indicators included in the GBFF results framework. This process will be done in parallel to the development of the guidelines for the GEF 9 results framework, results management framework, so that we ensure alignment across funds. And as of July 1st, 2026, we would require all new GBFF submissions to use the new results framework, the new indicators. All projects submitted prior to July 2026 would be requested to transition at their next best occasion, either at the CEO endorsement request stage or at their next project implementation report. And with that, I thank you, and I give back the floor to the co-chair. Many thanks.
Thank you, Jurgis, for your presentation. I'd now like to open the floor for any comments and questions, and I'll hand over to Naomi to manage any requests for interventions. Over to you, Naomi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair. The floor is now open. It seems that everything was very clear. Okay, Priyanka, thank you for breaking the ice. I'll give the floor to you, representing the Women GBFF Observer, followed by Lucrecia. Priyanka, floor is yours. Priyanka, I see you.
Yeah, just a second, okay? Give me a minute here. So thank you for such an amazing presentation. Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. And I'd like to make a very short and sweet comment on results framework. On behalf of CVD Women's Caucus, we welcome the enhanced GBFF results framework and appreciate the explicit inclusion of indicators related to women and girls. But we wish to flag several gender-related concerns that merit attention to ensure the framework translates into transformative impact on the ground. First, gender is largely captured through counts and process indicators, which is obviously an amazing progress, but such as the number of beneficiaries or frameworks supporting women and girls, this risk equating participation with empowerment. So this is our primary concern. We encourage the development of guidance that sort of strengthens qualitative benchmarks, including women's decision-making power, leadership roles, and control over resources, and not only their presence. Second, while sex disaggregated beneficiary data is required, there is limited clarity on how this data will inform adaptive management or accountability. Without feedback loops and project learning, midterm assessments, and performance assessment that do not include like gender data, this risk it becoming extractive rather than transformative. And third concern we have is financing and policy indicators remain largely gender neutral, particularly under finance mobilization, incentives, and private sector engagement. This creates a risk that significant financial flows may bypass women, especially at the local and grassroots level. We encourage explicit guidance to track whether mobilized finance, incentives, and policy reforms result in direct, accessible, and equitable benefits for women and women-led initiatives. And lastly, to make a comment, since this is probably the last part of the council session, we have been hearing through the council meetings that the frameworks, both results and resource mobilization, must accommodate a wide range of priorities and that it is not possible to reflect every perspective in equal detail. So at the same time, in response to that. We would like to highlight again that this precisely is the role of the GBFF Council to ensure that perspectives which are historically underrepresented, particularly those of women and girls, indigenous peoples and local communities, and youth, are not treated as optional or residual, but are intentionally reflected in the framework's design and implementation. Finally, we appreciate the realignment with Target 23 of KMGBF and the framework, and we're hoping to see that the framework does not work just as a siloed single indicator, but mainstreams gender responsiveness across spatial planning, restoration, sustainable use, and finance-related indicators. We hope that forthcoming indicator guidelines will address these gaps and ensuring that GBFF moves beyond gender safeguards and participation towards more gender transformative outcomes, resulting in equitable change on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Priyanka. Lucrecia, floor is yours, followed by Lauren.
Thank you very much.
Lucrecia, sorry to interrupt you, but your camera seems to be closed.
It seems to be not now. Yes, here I am.
Okay, there you go. Now we see you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I hope it's not too noisy background. We'd like to thank the Secretariat for the document and the various consultations for its elaboration. We commend the result, namely the enhanced results monitoring framework, which strikes a good balance between responding to the Council's request and ensuring pragmatism and feasibility and implementation at the same time. Going forward in the elaboration of the guidelines for implementation at the project level, similar reflections will be needed. First, and Jürgis did point to some of these issues when he presented it, but I'll mention it anyway. The headline indicators have been selected, among other reasons, because the data already exists and can be readily drawn upon, making reporting by countries relatively easy. However, this is not necessarily the case for reporting at the project level. But it also means that the data obtained at the project level is not necessarily needed for reporting to the CBD by countries. And then second reflection, how, if at all, will this data be used in the CBD context? We'd expect that the CBD uses the data at the portfolio level as an import for future global reports. However, how will it best be used to complement the data obtained through parties at through national reports? In short, this will it will require careful reflection on the ultimate objective, as well as on the costs of the reporting burden and the expected benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucrecia. Lauren, floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi. So we thank the Secretariat for the revised results framework, which we can approve. And we hope that a large majority of the GBFF projects that are already under development will be able to use the indicators from the revised results framework. We support the increased emphasis on funding mobilized, harmful subsidies, and positive incentives, as well as measuring the impact of policies and processes. We are especially supportive of the sub-indicator on the dollar amount of private funding, both domestic and international, mobilized. And this is a measurement that is relevant, we believe, for the GEF family of funds. And we wonder if it could be applied for all the funds in the GEF. This is maybe a discussion that we can have in connection with GEF 9. And finally, on a slightly different but related topic, we wonder if the projects in GEF 9 that are related to BBNJ will be reported against the KMGBF. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Now let's hear from Charlie Regina, and then we will pause to hear from Jürgis before we continue with the three remaining participants. So with that said, Charlie representing Ben Green from the UK, floor is yours.
Many thanks, Naomi. I'd like to echo some of the points that we've heard from colleagues in Norway and in Switzerland. This the proposal for the GBFF monitoring framework is very welcome. This is something that the UK has been pushing for a long time, to ensure that we have strong alignment with the GBF, and that we can really demonstrate the value that the GBFF has in delivering the GBF. We do recognise that these changes can only have happened once the GBF monitoring framework was agreed at COP16 in Rome last year, or this year, in fact, we're still in December, this year. So we really thank the GEF Secretariat for taking this forward over the last few months in order to bring it to this council meeting for approval. So overall, the changes, or the proposal is definitely a marked improvement on the use of the interim indicators that we've been using from the GEF Trust Fund, and we think that the GBF monitoring framework is more fit for purpose. Having said that, there are a few specific comments I have on some of the indicators. If now's the time to raise them with the floor, I can always follow up in detail if need be. As mentioned by Norway, we support the modification on headline indicator 18.2 on the value of harmful subsidies. But we're not convinced of the numbering between the different indicators. So the GBFF indicator 5, which maps to the GBF headline indicator 15.1, companies disclosing their biodiversity related risks, dependencies and impacts. Not convinced of the value of that indicator. It might be difficult to establish what difference a GBF fund project has made against the counterfactual where that project did not exist. And there's a risk of duplication between what the GBF fund project reports than what the national report it provides from a national level in terms of the number of companies, to make sure that there's no duplication between what the GBFF is reporting and what the national reporting takes place. So that indicator, I'm not convinced. However, we do support the GBFF indicator 9.4 on policies or processes created or strengthened that support the implementation of Target 15. That is something that we feel that the GBF fund projects can really demonstrate, and it really shows the sort of national implementation and the value add at a project level. There was a reference in the proposal about supporting the inclusion of these indicators from the GEF Trust Fund to capture the socio-economic benefits, and I think that's the discussion that's having under GEF now, something that we would support as well. I think that's something that it's tricky to capture, so I think that's something that we can work on together. Two final points I had. One was on the project tags that are mentioned, and about capturing some of the information from projects, not through an indicator, but through a project tag. I'd just like a little bit more information about that. How are they evaluated at project level, at portfolio level, and how will the Secretary report back to Council on those if it's not contained within sort of an indicator table? And finally, there's mention of quite detailed polygon data to report on interventions and effectiveness. It's just been useful to just have a bit more information about that. It's quite a technical point, but something that sounds really intriguing, so it'd be good to hear. With that, I'll wrap up for my intervention. Thank you very much, Naomi. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Now let's hear from Regina. Tienes la palabra.
Gracias, Noemi. Our constituency recognizes the importance of all GBFF projects to report on direct beneficiaries, disaggregated by gender, youth, and indigenous peoples and local communities. This level of detail is essential to ensure that the GBFF delivers measurable, inclusive, and equitable impacts. In addition, we support the requirement that from the CEO endorsement stage, every project must present a full set of indicators with baselines and targets. In Mexico's experience, this remains one of the main areas of opportunities in the preparation of our project proposals. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Regina. Now let's give some minutes to Jorges to address these very good comments and questions, and then we will go back to the list of speakers. Jorges, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Noemi, and thank you for all the comments. I will try to respond to the question and the comments in any particular order. First, Priyanka for our women representative. Well, points are well taken, and indeed, we did try to work hard to have more than just process indicators for gender-related dimensions. But we feel it's very difficult to do something that is applicable at the portfolio level that would cover any typical GBFF project. And that's the main challenge. We're talking about the results framework for the entire fund. So it's indicators that have to be applicable to a good share of the project so that it makes sense to have them at the portfolio level. Don't forget that obviously all projects have their own indicators to capture what they do. And GBFF projects have to follow the GEF policy that applies to all the family of fund, the policy on gender equality that goes way beyond just participation, but try to push towards empowerment. And there's a gender action plan that is associated to every project that has to define its indicator, its targets to really, in the tailored context for that project, make sure that all measures are taken to empower women and make sure they can contribute to the biodiversity outcome as well. So there is another aspect that takes place at the project level that we review at the project level, but we fail to find a way to capture that at the portfolio level that makes sense yet, and that we could include. So we have included new process-related indicators, those that have been agreed for the CBD tracking. It's already a progress, but more than looking forward to continue the discussion on how we can do better. Lucretia, thank you very much for the comments. And indeed, we already looked at before importing indicators, making sure they would be applicable at the project level, and there will be a detailed discussion on that when we develop the guidelines, but it's well taken, the cost-benefit balance and making sure they are relevant. So to be fed back to the CBD processes, we will align as much as possible with the CBD methodology for the indicators so that countries that have a GBFF project will be able to use that data as much as possible in their national reports. Not for the ones that are due for February, but at least for the one that will be due for the 2030 COP. So it will be part of the discussion and one of our main point of attention when developing the guidelines, which we'll do in collaboration with the CBD Secretariat, of course. Norway, the main question was on BBNJ projects. So obviously, when we'll report to the CBD COP, we'll report specifically on the contribution of each fund in the family of fund, but also across fund. And it will encompass all BBNJ funding that is relevant to the implementation of the KMGBF. That's what we foresee. And for the GEF 9 results management framework, we have already started discussing on how we can make sure that we can have indicators that will be relevant for the BBNJ process, even though the COP will have to decide what the BBNJ COP will have to decide what will be the role of the GEF in terms of project funding for BBNJ in the GEF 9 process. Charlie, thank you very much for the support and the comments. Well taken on the indicator 5 on the number of companies. So to our mind, we don't see an issue with duplication between what would be reported by the GBFF and national reports by countries. Ideally, there should be duplication because the GBFF will capture its contribution to countries' implementation. So what we will report will be a subset of the results reported by countries. So we don't see that as an issue. Obviously, for all indicators, there is an issue of attribution. What was really the role of the GBFF? And this is something we'll have to take care through the guidelines on when can a GBFF project claim that it has contributed to new companies reporting their impacts and dependency on nature. But that's the attribution question is throughout all indicators, not just this one. And we see this one as complementary to the other one, the 9.4, that is more on policy frameworks, because it's actually the result. Because you could have develop a policy framework that has no impact and no company discloses anything. So this one goes a step further by really measuring the impact. It's just a proxy. It's the number of companies that maybe doesn't reflect the turnover value of really the footprint of all companies, but at least it measures a result. And we have projects that work at this stage directly with the private sector to voluntarily do this, and not yet to develop the policy framework. So we wanted to capture those projects that work directly with the private sector that will voluntarily do TNFD-like work, and we have already some in the portfolio. So that's why we have kept those two indicators that may appear a bit redundant. On the project tagged, we actually every project from the concept stage up until the end have to tag, this is to check a box for every KMGBF target to which they contribute, and then justify why they tagged that target. So we review the tagging, and most of the time we ask agencies to remove some of the tags because they're a bit too generous. But so we capture that, and we'll be able to report on the number of projects that are contributed to target 13, etc. So that data we're collecting. We have not yet started reporting on it because it was the beginning of the portfolio, but we'll be able soon to report on that. But we have made sure we can capture that since inception of the fund. Finally, on Polygon data, so we're already across the GEF family of funds, we're encouraging projects to provide geolocation information of where the project is taking place. But most of the time, or often, the information is not detailed enough to know where specific restoration is taking place, where spatial planning is taking place. Sometimes it's just one dot in the middle of a big country and you don't exactly know. And so with that information, we can do little. If we know exactly where specific interventions are taking place, we can, after the fact, at the portfolio level, do, for example, some of the disaggregation that is proposed in the monitoring framework, know how much of the new protected areas we have created do overlap with key biodiversity areas, for example, or how many are covering wetlands or specific coral reefs. We'll be able to do that at portfolio level without having to ask every project to report on those detailed information. So that's what we're trying to get at, and we know it's going to be a big change, and we'll be working with agencies and countries to make sure that's feasible. I will stop there and give back the floor to Noemi. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Jorgis, for these very good responses to Council. Now let's hear from our remaining 4 speakers. We have Rachid, Aitor, Wang, and the CSO network. Rachid, vous avez la parole.
Merci. Merci beaucoup, Noémie. Bonjour, bonsoir tout le monde. Tout d'abord, je remercie le secrétariat pour la révision de ce cadre de résultats. Notre circonscription considère que cette révision est une étape technique cruciale pour l'efficacité et la redevabilité du GBFF. Aligner nos indicateurs de portefeuille sur le cadre de suivi de la CDB adopté à la COP16 permettra en fait au fonds de démontrer clairement sa contribution aux cibles comme l'île Montréal et facilitera le reporting national de nos pays. Nous approuvons la logique d'un cadre rationalisé à 11 indicateurs principaux et 26 sous-indicateurs qui cherchent à équilibrer exhaustivité et faisabilité. L'intégration d'indicateurs de politique et de processus comme l'indicateur 9 pour les cibles où la mesure d'impact direct est difficile au niveau projet est une solution concrète. Ceci étant dit, nous voulons attirer l'attention sur 2 aspects essentiels pour notre circonscription. Premièrement, le premier point, le renforcement des capacités et la définition d'une méthodologie claire. En effet, au niveau de l'annexe A, il est indiqué que pour plusieurs nouveaux indicateurs, exemple l'indicateur 1 sur les plans spatiaux, les méthodologies détaillées restent à développer dans les lignes directrices. Et il est essentiel que ce processus soit participatif et qu'il aboutisse à des outils simples, applicables et en adéquation avec les capacités nationales. Car un reporting compliqué pourrait être à l'encontre des bénéfices du fonds. Le deuxième point concerne la pertinence contextuelle du projet. Les indicateurs doivent en effet pouvoir couvrir, et selon le contexte de mise en œuvre de projet, les réalités de tous les écosystèmes, y compris les écosystèmes arides et semi-arides qui prédominent dans notre région. La désagrégation par écosystème proposée pour l'indicateur 2 relative à la restauration est une proposition dans ce sens. Enfin, donc, avec la prise en compte de ces orientations, nous soutenons le nouveau cadre et son entrée en vigueur le 1er juillet 2026. Et nous comptons sur le secrétariat pour fournir un appui technique conséquent au pays et aux agences durant cette phase de mise en œuvre. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup à toi, Rachid. Now let's hear from Aitor, Youth Representative for the GBFF. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Noemi. I'm speaking on behalf of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network and the Youth Observers. We welcome the result framework and reinforce the inclusive process through which observers were consulted and able to provide written inputs, many of which were appropriately reflected in the final document. We particularly welcome the significant improvements in indicators related to Indigenous peoples, local communities, women, and youth, including the inclusion of the indicators on land tenure and traditional territories. Likewise, the introduction of gender and youth disaggregated data is an essential first step toward making visible information that has long remained largely overlooked. We count on implementation agencies to ensure that these indicators are operationalized in a robust and effective manner, and we encourage future progress reports to include this disaggregated data to track progress related to the youth participation, gender participation, and in impacts from funded projects. We also wish to highlight that the frameworks remain limited in its ability to capture Section C of the KMGBF, which outlines the cross-cutting considerations for implementation. The KMGBF is a framework. It's inherently inclusive, grounded in whole of society, human rights-based, traditional knowledge, and intergenerational equity. If these dimensions are not adequately reflected in the result framework or in any monitoring system that intend to access contributions to the KMGBF implementation, we risk falling short of monitoring the KMGBF as a whole, even if progress is made on individual targets. Given that these cross-cutting considerations are not reflected in the project-level results framework, we recommend that an overview of the GBF projects to Section C to be incorporated at the portfolio level. In this regard, we respectfully suggest to the GEF Independent Evaluation Office to explicitly integrate Section C assessment qualitatively into its portfolio level analysis. At the same time, the results framework continues to omit a critical group under Target 22, and the inclusion of an indicator to measure the creation of or strengthening of policies that support or protect environmental human rights defenders could be designed as a simple binary indicator without imposing additional reporting burden on implementation agencies. Such indicator would help illuminate a critical and currently invisible gap that is largely being monitored by non-governmental organizations and should be further considered. Thank you, and back to you, Noemi.
Thank you very much, Aitor, for those statements. Now let's hear from Wang representing China, then Michelle and Ramson. Wang, floor is yours.
Thank you. First, like other speakers, we would like to thank the Secretariat for its dedicated efforts in revising the result framework document. We actually support the deepened alignment of the framework with the KMGBF. The enhanced framework systematically integrates with the KMGBF monitoring system, we want to highlight that some of the new indicators, particularly those related to the policies and the processes, rely on qualitative assessment and may be challenging to quantify or verify. So we recommend that subsequent guidelines clarify methodological standards and consider establishing the verification mechanism to ensure the data credibility. Finally, we commend effort to streamline the indicator set, including phasing out some underutilized indicators, which we believe will reduce the reporting burdens and improve the efficiency. However, we caution against the risk of selective reporting. Under the updated results framework, projects are only required to report on at least one other GBFF indicator. We are wondering whether this may incentivize selecting easier to achieve indicators or those with greater biodiversity impact. To address this concern, we propose that the Secretariat consider developing a portfolio-level balancing assessment mechanism to ensure the funding effectively covers multiple objectives and maintains the strategic focus. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Wang, for your intervention. I'll now hand it over to Michelle, who is speaking today on behalf of Sagar from the CSO network, who couldn't join us today, followed by Ramson. Michelle, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, esteemed colleagues and council members, co-chair, and thank you, Naomi, for your assistance today. You've been brilliant. I'm honoured to be here. My name is Michelle Tunga-Robson, and this is my first time addressing the council. I'm representing the Rewilding Academy, and I am the regional focal point for Europe for the GEF CSO network. The GEF CSO network welcomes the proposed enhanced result framework for the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund for the GBFF and appreciates the efforts to align it closely with the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We note positively that the framework introduces 11 core indicators, including 17 indicators adapted directly from the KMBGF monitoring framework, and that all GBF projects will be required to report disaggregated data on beneficiaries, including Indigenous peoples, local communities, women and youth. As a civil society, we anticipate that these measures will shape what happens on the ground. We therefore welcome the inclusion of dedicated Indigenous peoples and local community indicators, including those on tenure security support to IPCL actions, including policy and institutional frameworks. These are critical for reflecting GBFF's transformative ambition beyond ecological outcomes alone. At the same time, we see value in ensuring these indicators capture not only the presence of engagement, but also its quality and impact, particularly regarding shared decision-making, rights protection and long-term stewardship. Clear guidance on how IPCL-related indicators will be applied in practice, including assessing engagement quality, decision-making, participation and provision of technical training, will be essential for the effective framework implementation, in our opinion. We also welcome the intention to use the results framework as a learning tool and encourage its application during implementation, not only at the reporting evaluation stages, but to support adaptive management across the GBFF portfolio. The GEF CSO network looks forward to continued engagement as the results framework is finalised and implemented, to help ensure it supports biodiversity outcomes that are durable, equitable and grounded in Indigenous peoples and local community leadership. We thank you for your support. We look forward to a brighter future where we anticipate every voice will be heard and valued. Thank you so much. Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you so much to you, Michelle. We heard you loud and clear. Now let's go to our last participant requesting the floor. Ramson, GBFF observer representing IPLCs. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Naomi, for the floor. IFB welcomes the results framework of the Global Biodiversity Framework IFB would like to request that the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund implement a separate reporting for indicators on indigenous traditional territories, aligning this to our calls in the first subsidiary body on 8J, that they should be reported differently from protected areas and OECMs. Furthermore, IFB proposes that the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund also aligns with the indicators on traditional and land tenure indicators of the KMGBF, and we further request that we can engage with the expert team of the IFB engaging on the indicators to provide an explicit list of the indicators that we would like to be reported on. Finally, the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund should take into consideration the indicators developed by the Global Environmental Facility, or GEF7, and GEF8 initiatives supporting indigenous peoples and local communities in projects ICI 1 and the Heart of Conservation, which were developed by indigenous peoples and local communities to support the implementation of these projects on the ground, and also to promote their self-determination in the allocation of financial resources and the work done on the ground. Thank you very much for the floor.
Thank you very much, Ramson. With no one else requesting the floor, back to you, Jorgis, for final remarks on this agenda item.
Thank you very much, Noémie, et merci à notre collègue du Maroc. Point well taken on indeed the need to make sure that in the guidelines we'll develop that all the methodologies are clear and applicable in all contexts, and that will be front and center in our work, and we plan to have inclusive consultations to make sure all indicators are indeed doable and measure what they're meant to measure. But thank you for this reminder, and a reminder to make sure that they work in all contexts, including in arid ecosystems. We'll make sure it's the case. To Aita from youth, well, many thanks again for the inputs that were provided through the consultations and the recommendations. As we discussed, we decided not to include the indicator that was suggested by youth on environmental defenders, simply because it's not front and center. There is no specific eligible activities focused on that in the program direction. And by experience, we have very few, if any, projects really targeted with results on that. So if there are projects that do have contribution, they will be able to capture that at the project level. And we can always go back in our projects to check specific items, but bearing an indicator at the portfolio level where we know in advance there will be very few, if any, project reporting on it, didn't make sense, because it does generate some reporting burden from the Secretariat and agencies and all our IT systems to include additional indicators. To China, many thanks for the comments, and indeed for guidance on how we'll develop the guidelines. On the caution on selective reporting, so how it works is all projects are still reviewed. It's the same approach in the GEF Trust Fund where we require project just to have the number of beneficiaries at a minimum. And some projects only have the number of beneficiaries because they cannot capture any other results given the type of work they do. But through the GEF Secretariat review process, we do ask proponents and push them to report on all the results they can generate, and really push them to report on as many indicators that are relevant for them. And we'll continue to do that in the GBFF to make sure that when the projects are approved, all possible results that can be delivered by a given project are captured, and we are able to report on it at the portfolio level. So that will continue, and we'll make sure that that is the case and avoid a bias in the selection of just a few indicators that are maybe more easy to report on. I think then there were comments that are well taken from our CSO network. And in the interest of time, I will just conclude to Ramson, just to reassure you that in our final proposal, indigenous and traditional territories are to be reported separately from protected areas and other effective conservation measures. So we really put it as a separate reporting line that may overlap with protected areas and OECMs, but it's separate. The indicator on land tenure is there, and we welcome your proposal to help in the development of the guidelines for that and for the continued support. Many thanks for that. Back to you, Noemi.
Thank you, Jorgis. With no one else requesting the floor, I'll give it back to the co-chair.
Thank you, Noemi, and thank you, Jorgis, for your the presentation and response to the questions, and of course the many interventions that were incredibly valuable. Thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to invite Council to adopt the draft decision that is included in the documents, and it's GEF/GBFF/05/05. I don't see any requests for the floor. And on that basis, the decision is so approved. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 6, which is under other business. I understand that there's been one request for any other business, and I'll now hand over to the IEO for your item.
Thank you for the floor, Mr. Co-Chair. Good day, esteemed council members. The IU presented the first formative evaluation at the 4th GBFF Council, which endorsed the management response. The Council also approved the budget for the 2nd GBFF evaluation, which will be presented at the 6th GBFF Council in June 2026. This evaluation focuses on 3 key areas. The first key area will assess GBFF's strategy and design, GBFF relevance to KM-GBFF target, its complementarity with the GEF Trust Fund, and follow up on lessons and recommendations from the first evaluation. The second key area will assess GBFF processes, including resource mobilization and enhanced support to IPLCs, SIDS, and LDCs. The third key area will assess the project portfolio, including relevance to GBF targets, coherence with the GEF Trust Fund, and support for IPLC-led initiatives, LDCs, and SIDS, as well as early results and efficiency. Before I conclude, I reiterate GITA's response to Mexico's request. The IO will conduct an analysis comparing biodiversity projects by IFIs and others in our next biodiversity focal area study. Thank you for your attention. I return the floor to you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you very much for that intervention. Very much appreciated. I don't see any other requests for any other business, so we will close this item. And at this point, we will jump back into the GEF agenda, heading back to agenda item 9, any other business. I believe there's 2 requests under any other business for this item. The first is in relation to the co-chair for 2026, and maybe Noemi, I can hand over to you to read out the draft decision text for consideration.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. As you very well mentioned, there was this request to be discussed on any other business, Council Co-Chair for 2026. So with appreciation for Council guidance, I now put forward on their behalf the following decision on the Council Co-Chair that I will now read. The Council decides to extend Mr. Richard Bontier, Council member for the constituency of Australia, New Zealand, and the Republic of Korea, as co-chair until the 71st GEF Council meeting, at which time a new co-chair will be appointed. Regular co-chair terms will resume at this time. So with that said, the floor is now open. With no one requesting the floor, Mr. Co-chair, so back to you.
Thank you, Naomi. With no requests for the floor, propose the decision be agreed. I don't see any requests. Okay, the draft decision is so approved. Thank you, council members and Naomi. And in particular, thank you for the opportunity to continue in the co-chair role temporarily. I'd now like to hand over to Gisela, and she's got another item to raise under any other business. Over to you, Gisela.
Many thanks, Co-Chair. Many thanks, Richard. And thanks for this opportunity. I will take very few seconds. I would like to bring to your attention the scheduling of GEF council meetings, and particularly those convened at the end of each calendar year. The final weeks of December often coincide with the significant overlaps for many member countries, making participation quite challenging. In light of this, we respectfully request that consideration be given to rescheduling the second council meeting of the year to earlier dates, ideally towards the end of November or beginning of December. And as an immediate proposal, we would like to suggest that the dates for GEF Council Meeting 72 be set for 30 November or December 2026. Over. Thank you.
Thank you, Gisela. I just want to check, Naomi or Claude, if you want to do an immediate response to that, or do we come back separately?
Richard, I believe that we can just open the floor for any council members, alternates for council to respond to Gisela. If not, this decision can be endorsed, and we will, of course, update accordingly. And I see no one requesting the floor. Thank you, Gisela.
Yeah, just a minute, Naomi. I think I support Gisela's request, but just ensure that the dates doesn't clash with the other international conventions like the bank's annual meetings or the COP meetings dates. That should be ensured that if you're keeping in November, because November is generally a packed month too for all these international conventions and meetings. So that should be ensured that the dates doesn't overlap. Because a lot of us cannot be outside our capitals also for a long time at a stretch. So I thought I just flag that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Anil. I'll now give the floor to Lucrecia. Thank you, Anil. I will now give the floor to Lucrecia.
This is a mistake. I'm sorry. I have by accident the hand up. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lucrecia. So now, hearing on Gisela's and Anil's, what I would propose, we can review your dates, Gisela. We will see if there is any international overlap, and I would suggest that this would be a decision by email. So in the following weeks, once that we review all these international events, we can share by email. As always, we will give council the opportunity to review, to comment, and if that's agreeable, we can proceed that way, hoping to have our new agreed date by November next year. Gisela, yes, have the floor.
Many thanks, Noemi, for this very quick response. Of course, for C72, we already made a check with the meetings that we are under our let's say umbrella. So I can assure you that there is no overlap with COP and other funds, but of course this is the main rationale in order to schedule the meeting. But I really appreciate the opportunity to reconsider anticipating a bit these meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gisela. You are one step ahead. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, I mean, with that said, then if council agrees with this proposal put forward by Gisela, then we can put that one forward, and if agreed, we will update any other business. So the floor is open for any additional questions, comments on this proposal. Okay, I hear from the chat that some council members do request that we do decision by email. There might be some overlaps that we're not yet considering. Gisela, would this be agreeable to you that we take into consideration the dates, but maybe council might need a bit longer to assess if these dates are agreeable to everyone? Would that be okay, Gisela, that we send this? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Gisela, and thank you, council, for your good comments. So, okay, yes, I see agreements on this way forward. So, I think, Mr. Co-Chair, we have an agreement. I will send this suggestion via email. Council can comment, and then we will update accordingly. With that said, back to you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you very much, Naomi, and thank you, Gisela, for the suggestion and all the feedback, and noting that the Secretary will look at this a bit further and seek to get a decision via email at a session. So on that point, any other business is now closed. At this juncture, we're about to go the final elements of the meetings are the joint summary of the co-chairs across the 3 meetings. We are proposing to take a short break in order for the Secretariat to finalise those documents and distribute via email, and then we'll reconvene to finalise and get council approval. Naomi, would you be able to just give the specifics on when we will reconvene, please?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. So now in DC is 9:22. So I would suggest that I haven't sent the emails. I will do so very shortly, and I suggest that we give council some 10-15 minutes to review the drafts. So maybe we can reconvene at 9:45 DC time, which is 20 minutes from now, so we can review the 3 joint summary of the co-chairs. Okay, seeing no one with the floor, then thank you for that. I will share the email in no time, and we will see you back in 20 minutes, 9:45 DC time. Thank you, and see you shortly. All right, Council. I believe that we are back in 9:45, so we can review the joint summary of the co-chairs. Mr. Co-chair, if you could kick us off.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I had to push the buttons to bring me back to life. So thank you, Naomi, for circulating the documents, which hopefully all council members would have received. So in terms of, we'll run through the joint summary, firstly with the GEF, and I'll hand over to Naomi to run through that document, please. Over to you, Naomi.
Thank you, Mr. Co-chair. So the joint summary of the co-chairs have been sent via email to council members, alternates, and as we usually do, I won't read into every decision. I will just name each number, paragraph, to see if there is any comment. And of course, after it will be adopted, we will post online as usual. So with that said, let's kick us off. The joint summary of the co-chairs starts with the opening of the meeting, adoption of the agenda, relations with conventions and other international institutions, and the report of the chairpersons of the STEP. That's paragraph 1 to 4. No comments? Okay. I will briefly pause just to see if anyone has any comment. We will now jump into the decisions. Decisions approved. We have decision 24, the GEF monitoring report 2025. No comments. Decision 25, 2025, which is the work program of the GEF Trust Fund, including paragraph 6 all the way to paragraph 40. Okay. Decision 26, 2025, relations with conventions and other international institutions. Decision 27, evaluation of food system programs and management response. Decision 28, the 8th comprehensive evaluation of the GEF and management response. Decision 29, report of the SRC. We have decision 30 from paragraphs 46 to 48, and decision 39, other business, paragraph 49. I see no comments from the floor, Mr. Co-chair, so back to you.
Thank you very much, Naomi. So on that basis, I consider that the summary of co-chairs is now approved. Thank you. We'll now move over onto the summary of co-chairs for the LDCF SCCF meeting. Noting this was distributed by email, and I'll hand over to Naomi to walk through the summary para by para. Over to you, Naomi.
Thank you, Mr. Co-chair. So again, this has been circulated. We'll go paragraph by paragraph. So opening of the meeting, adoption of the agenda. Paragraphs 1 to 5. Then up to the decisions approved, decision LDCF SCCF number 7, work program, paragraphs 6 to 9. Decision 8, progress report. Decision 9, annual monitoring report of the fiscal year 25. And then we conclude with other business, which are the contributions announcements, IEO, paragraphs 13 to 17, and joint summary of the co-chairs, paragraph 8. I see no one requesting the floor. Mr. Co-chair, back to you.
Thank you, Naomi, and appreciate you running through that. Noting no requests from the floor, we'll consider the joint summary of co-chairs for the LDCS SCCF meeting. Approved. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 7 in relation to the GBFF summary of co-chairs, which was also distributed by Naomi. Thank you. Who I'll now hand over to walk through para by para. Over to you, Naomi.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. So again, opening of the meeting, adoption of the agenda, paragraphs 1 to 5. Jumping into the decisions, decision GBFF 6, work program of the GBFF, paragraph 6 to 9. Then we have decision 7, progress report. Decision 8, towards a resource mobilization strategy for the GBFF 2025-2030, paragraphs 11 and 12. And we will conclude with decision 9, results framework of the GBFF. And other business, and here I received a comment. Thank you for updating the name. It was Anupam who delivered this agenda item, so we will update accordingly before we update. We upload online. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. With no one requesting the floor, I will give it back to you.
Thank you, Naomi. And on that basis, I see no further requests from the floor. And the joint summary of co-chairs for the GBFF is hereby approved. Thank you. That brings us to the close of the 3 meetings. And I'd like to express my gratitude for your support of council, observers, over the course of this week. It's a virtual session, so it brings its own challenges. But from my perspective, the meeting has gone tremendously well, and that's I think because of the dedication and the support of all the council members and those engaging. So I want to express my appreciation. On this, at this point, I'd like to hand over to Naomi in case there's any announcements and also a reminder of the dates for the next council meeting. Over to you, Naomi.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. So just recapping, we will send via email the decision on the council meeting for December 2026. The next council will be starting on May 31st, 2026 in the beautiful and historic Uzbekistan. Back to back with the GEF Assembly, side events, CSO forums, exhibits, site visits, and other very exciting events that we are preparing for you and with you. So thanks to everyone for joining and for the very useful guidance provided to the Secretariat this week. Rest assured that we heard you loud and clear and that it will be taken into consideration into our everyday work. A heartfelt thanks to colleagues, especially joining from the East, who joined us every day in the early morning hours due to time zones, and especially to our dear co-chair who is joining us from Australia, 2 a.m. if I'm not mistaken. Thank you, Richard. Just your contributions have consistently gone above and beyond. Thank you on behalf of the council, and it has been a great pleasure working with you. With that, enjoy your weekend, happy holidays, and we will stay in touch.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.